Okay, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this session, Automated UI Testing of Delphi Applications with Ranorex Studio. So, my name is Christian Breitwieser. I will do this presentation here. I'm an engineer here at Ranorex. At Ranorex now already since something like 6 or 7 years. And I will do this webinar together with my colleague Tobias, who will be on the Q&A panel. And, oh, sorry, I hid a slide, which you should see now. Sorry for that small hiccup. It would be just helpful for you if you could just also quickly respond the Q&A panel. If you can also hear my voice and screen sharing and audio transmission, everything is working properly. And whenever you have questions, then also it would be great if you could use this Q&A panel. My colleague Tobias will have an eye on this panel and answer your questions as good as he can there immediately during the webinar, and we'll also have some Q&A part at the end of the webinar to answer questions there. Okay, so no feedback yet, but Jim, you heard me, therefore I think everything is working. Just the screen sharing. Oh, now it moved to the agenda. Okay, perfect. So the agenda of this webinar here is at the very beginning. I would like to give you a quick overview about testing, software testing at all, to get an understanding of what testing really means, or especially what UI testing means. Then I would like to introduce you to Ranorex. After that, there will be a live demonstration. So I will do everything live here during this webinar, no pre-recorded videos. And then we'll also have a Q&A part at the end. But yeah, if maybe some of you have already participated in some of our webinars, usually I'm very, very curious. And therefore, I would have a question to all of you. What is your role in your organization? So I've started a poll right now. You should see it, and it would be great if you could reply to this poll. Just select what fits your role best. Click on developer, tester, test automation engineer, whatever it is, because then depending on the audience, I can then target the webinar more to your needs and to your experience. Hey guys, just 15% voted right now. It's just one click on the screen. It would be really great if you could provide me some feedback here. 24%. Actually, I'm used to reach numbers like 90%. Okay, we're at 30%, but developer is definitely the winner here, and a few testers, some managers, some other roles. Okay, thank you very much for your feedback. The poll was now open for 1 minute, and let me share the results here with you. So most of the people in the audience, as I expected, are developers. Therefore, I will also show you what you can do with Ranorex on a code level. I'm developer myself, therefore that's actually what I really like. Have you ever heard of Ranorex before this webinar, or completely new? So if we were just curious if we already have Ranorex experts here in the audience. Okay, the result is currently not representative because we only have 3% voted. Come on, 4%, thank you very much. Okay, yes is getting more, 16%. Oh, okay. Lots of potential in the audience. 30% nearly voted. Can we reach 40? 31% voted, 33. I will keep the poll open for a few more seconds. Then after this poll, no polls for the next few minutes, but I have a few more. Okay, thank you very, very much for your feedback. I will close it 38%. Okay. Ranorex is not completely unknown. 13% of the people have already once heard of Ranorex, but most of you have never heard of our tool. Perfect. Then I will explain also our tool a little bit in more detail. But before that, let's talk a little bit about testing, software testing. On this slide here, you can see the testing pyramid. And this is actually how testing should be. I was a sales engineer for some years, saw many customer projects, and believe me, it's usually the other way around. So in the ideal world, there would be many unit tests, 60, 80%, a couple of integration tests, and only a few UI tests and manual tests. The reason for that is executing unit tests is very fast, and when we come to UI or manual tests, the execution speed just becomes slower. One advantage have these UI, or a big advantage of these UI tests, is that you can also cover more complex scenarios. Therefore, it's very important to have a mixture of these kinds of tests. Yeah, and that's how the real world mostly looks like to our experience. It's not the testing pyramid anymore. It's the testing ice cream cone, where, yeah, all these beautiful this ice cream here above are manual tests. This is from our experience. Most of the tests out there, or most of testing time, is still invested in manual testing. And yeah, the advantage is you can cover many complex scenarios, but it is very slow. And whenever you do a build on your CI system, it's a little bit hard to then immediately get the manual tester to click through the new code that you just committed. And with Ranorex, you could more easily get to a level of automation and get feedback much faster. And after a while, you can reach something like this, where you then or work towards this, that you have lots of unit tests, integration tests, and also a good number of automated UI tests, which you can run all the time. Whenever you push a commit to your version control system, you will immediately, an automated UI test will immediately get executed together with your unit tests, and you will have fast feedback immediately for you guys, the developers. That's just what automation can bring. Fast feedback for you. You will identify the issues much earlier than by just clicking manually through the individual new features. That will shorten your release cycles. For the managers out there, that will also reduce the costs. And what I usually enjoyed, I have more time to implement cool and interesting features, and don't have to hunt or do bug hunting and try to figure out why something does not work anymore, although I changed a line of code on the other end of the application. And automation, UI automation, will help you to reach these goals. Let me quickly introduce Ranorex very quickly. But before we start with that, what kinds of tests do you currently accomplish? Do you do unit testing, integration testing, automated testing, or manual testing? That's a multi-select. Just select whatever fits your current testing principle. Manual is the winner. Please be honest. Please be honest. Currently, 4% of the audience voted. Can we reach the numbers from before where we had something like 30% voted? Okay, it's now going up 17, 18%. Oh, hey guys, great. Unit testing, integration testing, perfect. But 90% have also selected manual testing. Yeah, manual testing will always be there. Can we get a few more votes? A little more? Okay, thank you very much for your feedback. We are now at 36% of the audience who have provided feedback. Hey guys, that's great. Thank you very much. Let me share the results with you. Actually, I don't know how the testing pyramid would look like, because 37% unit testing, integration testing, a little bit of UI testing, we would have the big bunch of ice cream on top of the pyramid in this case. I will draw this the next time for a webinar. And for those of you who very, very few, the 8%, do you have, which UI test automation tool do you guys use? If you know it. And also for the others, if also maybe you know that there is some UI automation in place, just click on I don't know. Would also be great if you could provide me here some feedback. I usually enjoy making these webinars a little bit more interactive, not just listening to my voice. Oh, people use Ranorex Studio. A little bit of test complete, and I don't know. Test complete, test complete. Okay. Oh, thank you. That's cool. This is now, afterwards you will see what you can do with Ranorex and why we are definitely a better choice here. Okay, we're reaching 1 minute. Closely 20% of the audience has voted. 22, 23. Okay, thank you very, very much. Let me share the results here with you as well. And you see, okay, Ranorex is used, and other end, test complete, except of I don't know, are the most frequent choices. Okay, let me move on here with this webinar, with the slides. And the major part of this webinar, of this session here, will be a live demonstration. So I won't bore you much longer with PowerPoint slides. Some background on Ranorex. The company got founded in 2007. So it's already 11 years old and will reach 12 years next year. It's actually a European company. We're coming from Austria. Our most prominent export from Graz, where Ranorex was founded, is Arnold Schwarzenegger. You might know him. And yeah, Ranorex comes from the same city. Actually, the birthplace from Arnold is just 2 kilometers away. We are part of Idera since October 2017. So we are now 1 year in the Idera group. And Ranorex was actually also recognized, or is recognized, by Gartner and Forrester. We are now in Gartner's Magic Quadrant, the 4th year in a row, and we're specialized on UI test automation. When we have a look at our customer base, we currently have 14,000 users, around 14,000 users worldwide. The number is growing. And we have a very, very big technology support. So with Ranorex Studio, you can accomplish desktop, web, and mobile UI test automation. And because here we are, this CodeRage here, Delphi and C++ is very interesting here. We also provide support for these frameworks, have a native Delphi integration, which I would like to show you afterwards. And the cool thing about Ranorex is, you guys, most of you are developers. We're working in an abstraction-based mechanism. At the very, very bottom, we have the Ranorex library. So you can accomplish everything that I will show you during this webinar, either using our modules, but also in code. Ranorex uses .NET in the background. So you can do write everything in code in Ranorex Studio, or also in Visual Studio or some other IDE of your choice. And independent of whatever technology. Doesn't matter if you're carrying out a test on Qt or Java, if you're carrying out some web test or some mobile test automation. The next abstraction layer in this case is our repository. You will see this in the webinar as well. The repository is just a mapping of UI elements into a repo. So you have individual identifiers of UI elements, which you would like to automate afterwards in your test automation project. Here, for example, if someone wants to carry out or wants to work with this user login field here, the people can simply reuse this object in code, or what you see here in the third abstraction layer within our modules. We have actually two types of modules: action-based modules or code modules. And the action-based module can also used in two ways also with code. The action-based module, you can use a record and replay approach, or assemble the action module manually with the repository items I mentioned on the slide before. Or the middle, or let's start on the right, let's continue on the right-hand side, or you write everything in code. For example, my something repo item .click .select .key press, and create your whole test automation project on a code level. Or in the action module, you can also use both. And yeah, as said, I'm an engineer. I personally love showing the tool instead of messing around with PowerPoint slides, and therefore, let's start with that. Before that, I'll quickly open Ranorex Studio here. For this webinar, for this session here, we created a very, very small, simple application. We called it the VIP database. It's implemented in Delphi here. So no magic. If you're interested, I can also send you the application if you want to play with it. Let me quickly start it here, and it's actually just here used to demonstrate a very, very simple use case, but that is very common in automation. We have input fields where I can type in some text. I have something to select, something else to select, and when I click a button, something changes. So here something gets added to the UI, to a list, and I can clear the list again. Actually a perfect scenario for UI test automation, and we could also then extend it to much more complex scenarios. Actually, we could even automate Ranorex Studio if we want to. Our developers did that. Okay, let me close Ranorex Studio, keep this application open here, and open Ranorex Studio now. This is the tool that we create. This is how Ranorex Studio looks like when you start it. It's just one difference if you would start it the very first time, there this new solution wizard would get open. Now let me show you how Ranorex works. In this case, we would like to test a desktop application. I select desktop. Then Ranorex already provides you some settings, such as the solution name with the location. You can then also even automatically edit to source control, switch from C# to VB.NET. So the language in the background is either C# or VB.NET. Let me change the folder here very quickly on my desktop. Where is it? The CodeRage and Rx test. Oh, let me create a new one. New folder. Just call it test. Put it in here. Continue. Then Ranorex asks me, what application do I want to use? Because the VIP app is already running here, it's visible, it's listed here already. Otherwise, I could also browse for this application. You can also then hand over startup arguments. So many things possible. Let me continue with that. And now, this is already an advanced screen. Currently, I will select focus on a single application because then Ranorex will ignore clicks on other applications. Otherwise, you can also create cross-technology scenarios, switching from one application to the other, from some desktop app to a browser. So actually, it's a little bit Windows. Click and continue. We're done. Let me finish this. Here we are. And this is what Ranorex then creates. We have here, what we see here in the middle of the screen is our so-called test suite, where we have our the test suite is just called, my test 8. And these are the individual modules that were automatically created. A module to start the application under test, a recording, you will see that later, and a module to close the application under test, so you can easily modularize the keywords into, or a longer script into, certain actions. On the lower left hand side, we have here the module browser, where you can then reuse these modules in the test suite. And here in the upper left corner, this is a common projects view, which you should know from Ranorex Studio and other IDEs. And on the right hand side, there is also a tutorial which would show you how to start with Ranorex. I won't go through this tutorial step by step, because this is also what I will show you in the demo. When we have a look at recording one with a double click, you see here now, this is the actions table, how we call it. And I will start here at the beginning with a simple recording based approach. So I will use record. I click on first name. Let me add Mr. John Travolta here to this VIP database list. This guy is an actor and he's male. Add, and then let's add someone else. Let's add Mr. Nick Cage. Okay, actually he's also an actor and also male. Let's make him female and edit. And then let me click the clear button. It's actually not a very, very complex test that we have here. Let me close the application here for a second. But now let me show you what Ranorex did. It recorded all the individual actions. For example, here a mouse click, a left mouse click on this first name field here. Then we had another mouse click on up. Actually, then we had a key sequence where I typed in John in this first name field here as well. Then I clicked on last name. So as you see on the right hand side, you can easily follow all the steps that were carried out. First name, Nick Cage, and so on. Here is selected female and male. If we want to get rid of an action, simply select it, press the delete button, and we're done. And what I mentioned before, that's what I forgot. Give me a second. Desktop, where is the CodeRage? VIP 32. This is actually the app that I created before, because now I also would like to quickly show you what this repository means here. As you see in the actions table, it always works the approach. We have an action on an item. Here on the right hand side, we have these repository items, and the repository is represented here in this area here. And these items here identify these repository items with screenshots and everything. If you would like to identify it directly, we can also highlight it here on the UI. And we're doing here an object identification. We're not working with screenshots. We really identify these objects by properties and reading out the UI. And then you can reuse it here for automation. Let's quickly run this automation here for a second. To first name, John Travolta, movie, male, add, Nick Cage. Again, I selected female this time, clear, and we're done. And that's actually how you can get a very quick start with Ranorex. Start the application, press the record button, press the run, and click on run. This now I just executed here a recording module, which is now just a simple script. If you would like to use that stuff that we have here in a more modular way, we can also split these things into dedicated modules. Therefore, let's have a look here. With these actions, we added Mr. John Travolta to this VIP database. Therefore, I can move that now to a new recording module. Let's call it add VIP. Create, and I'm done. And the module appears here on the left-hand side. There it is. Actually, I will remove now Mr. Nick Cage here for a moment, because if we have time, I also would like to show you later on how to do data-driven testing. Therefore, I just keep this clear button here, and we'll rename the recording one to clear database or clear list. And now I have my dedicated modules here on the left-hand side, and I can simply reuse these modules here in the test suite and put together the keywords the way I need. For now, we only have these 4 modules: start, stop application under test, and add a VIP and clear the database. But let's quickly run it and see what happens. Ranorex starts the VIP database, adds Mr. John Travolta, and we're done. That was pretty fast. Now, when we have a look in here, we only see now a couple of actions being carried out. Actually, what's often pretty interesting is to have some screenshots to see what happened here on the UI, because we are doing UI test automation. When I go here to add VIP, it's pretty easy to extend this actions table here with repository items or also additional actions. For example, with add new action, I could now add additional mouse clicks, add log messages or comments, something like that, delays, whatever you need. Or another approach is also, I simply take the repository item, drag and drop it into the actions table, and then I can select what actions we would like to carry out. For example, capture a screenshot now after we have added the VIP to the database, and after clear DB, I will create another screenshot of the application. Let me run it again, and then we will see that it was actually really simple then to extend this stuff here. Okay, expand details, and now compared to the report we had before, now we have here a screenshot after we clicked on add Mr. John Travolta. It's now added to the database, and after we clicked clear, it's empty again. Yeah. But good question is, how do we do validations? And for that, we can also now use run to here if you would like to extend something like that. Okay, now we have Mr. John Travolta here in the database, because for test automation, it's also very, very important to have to validate things on the UI if things are working properly. Therefore, I will add a new module here just directly after add VIP. A new recording module. I will call it just validate VIP. Here we go. And now I could either again use the record button, go on record, go to validation mode, click on John. Then we have here a UI tree already where we see all the individual elements of the application in a tree representation. When I click on next, we could now validate individual attributes here. Text is most interesting. In this case, it contains John. Just click OK. And then here in the recorder, this is what I skipped before. We also see all the actions that were recorded during or that were captured during the recording. For example, here we have a validation that the attribute text equals John. Let me stop the recording, because this is validate attribute equals text, and it's John. Okay. Now, let me already do a little bit deeper dive, because most of you guys are developers, and therefore I think you are very experienced, and actually such a record and playback should not be a big deal for you. What might also be interesting for you is our spy tool, which unfortunately opened on my other screen. There it is. The Ranorex spy. This is actually one of the most powerful things that we have here in our tool. This spy is able to identify the UI elements and to inspect them and to build locators. I could also use a way, for example, I open the SPY and use the track button. And if I would like to inspect, to go to John Travolta, then we again have a similar view as we had it before in the actions tab, in the validations tab. But here you can now also afterwards have a look at the locator. For those of you who have ever heard from an XPath, we are using an XPath to identify the UI elements. And with this XPath, we can make the identification, or we can make the UI identification very, very flexible. I can remove here, for example, this from the XPath, use 2 slashes, and it will still identify Mr. Travolta. In this case, you could either use a column or a row. If we put in row and another slash, up, where was it? We now identified through the row. So it's up to you. You can now also customize the way how this element gets identified. If you then would like to carry out a validation, you can also drag and drop that into the actions table. Where is it? Validation. We would like to use the text, and it gets automatically populated here with Travolta. This is the power of the SPY. And this SPY does not just work for Delphi applications. It works for all kinds of applications. This just only shows the VIP database because I used this whitelisting where I said at the very beginning, single application. But here, this is the SPY without this whitelisting, and it's able to identify controls of pretty much every technology out in the world that you can imagine. Therefore, you could also use it to test WinForms application, WPF, SAP, web applications, Android, iOS. We cover tons of technologies. But the topic of this webinar is Delphi. Therefore, I will move on with this one here. This is our SPY here, really a very, very powerful tool. And because most of you who already do test automation come from Test Complete, have a look at this SPY. My opinion, the SPY is much more powerful than this inspector that's provided by most other tools out there. Okay, this was Validate VIP. We still have some minutes left. Therefore, let me show you how you can create a data-driven test. We could either make this test being data-driven, or we create a new one. New test case, I just keep the name test case 1. In this test case, let me add the setup and the teardown region. The teardown region is special because these modules in here will always get executed whenever whatever happens during the test. If this module fails, ClearDB would not get executed anymore, but everything in the teardown will get executed. For developer language or C#, it's a finally. Okay, I would like to start the application under test and close the AUT in teardown, and then add a VIP in the middle. And as said, I would like to do it data-driven. I go to add VIP, and now I would like to make John being a variable. Therefore, just call it variable first name. The default value would be John. I do the same for Travolta. Last name, and the naming is completely up to you. And the cool thing is we could also do create variables even in the object identification. So for example, this validation here for the objects, we could also make that variable. So sorry, that was maybe too fast. By simply clicking edit in SPY here, it opens the SPY I showed you before. And I can also make that use here variable first name already. Apply, and we are done. And we do the same for Travolta, edit in SPY. I created variable last name already. And now we have a variable-based identification of UI objects. The UI, the test suite now tells me, hey guy, you have 2 unbound variables. That's not because we now have to populate these variables. It's like you're not assigning a string in code. Therefore, that was again too fast. I go to the test case and select a data source, because now I would like to add VIPs in a row, step one after one, to this to this test. Data source. I will create a simple table here, but you can also use external data connectors. So do it a data-driven test, for example, through an Excel spreadsheet, through SQL connector, or through a CSV file. That was Excel, wrong one. Simple data file. It's the VIP list. We call it like that. And the first column would be variable first name. Another column, variable last name. And I add here John Travolta again, and Nicolas Cage. That's it. Click on apply. And now you see here, this test case is now equipped with the VIP list, and it has 2 rows, but the variables are still unbound. Therefore, let's do a data binding. And with this data binding, we now connect the data from my data source, so these 2 rows, to the individual variables. So wherever we use variable first name, we use the data from where we use the data column, this column here, variable first name, with my module variable in my module add VIP. And the same for last name. If the column and the variable have the same name, you can also simply use auto bind. That's it. When I now click the run button, I have to close that before. It will, I will interrupt it for a second because I only want to execute this test case here. It will add John Travolta, actor, start it again, and Nicolas Cage. And maybe some of you are asking, hey, why did the application now start 2 times? That's because the way how I nested the modules here. This VIP list, you can interpret it as a loop. That's a for loop. For I to n, and row number 1, row number 2. If you would like to have it in a where is it? Very quickly, a new test case. If you would like to start the application only once and add 2 people to the database, I will then drag this this loop here into another test case and put these, the start and stop here outside of the loop. This is now the loop. Within the loop, I carry out add VIP. And if I now execute it the second time, it now adds John Travolta, and it adds Nicolas Cage. So it's that easy to work with this that level. Okay, that was Ranorex really within a few minutes. And now I also would like to show what you can do on a code level. Because when we have a look at add VIP, for example, doing a right mouse click here, and where is it? View code. In the background of Ranorex, a big code generation engine is running, and every action that you see here is actually associated here with these 2 lines of code represent this action here. That one is represented by this. The cool thing is you could now also customize that stuff. For example, if you want a very, very special mouse click or a more complex action, you can convert something like that to user code. And also again, but the cool thing is hand over repository items. And in this user code, you could now report.log. This is the log message, and this is the repository item. The repo item had the handed over repo item, text info, and .click. We have IntelliSense and everything available here. So for example, repo dot what was it? we have, where is it? The application under test, there it is. And if we would like to click on this female button that we had here, you can also write your tests like that if you prefer to use a code-based or a coding approach to create your tests. And this is now in the slides that I showed before, actually the middle here. This is the actions table with code. And the cool thing is, this approach, you can also closely work together with testers. The tester uses his recording approach, and you as a developer can write your user code items. And you can also reuse these items in other modules. Or when we move on here, we also have something what we call the code modules. If I, for example, add here a code module, I leave the default name user code 1. Now everything is in code. And now I open the repository here, put it on the right-hand side. This is actually, from a developer's perspective, my favorited feature. Let me open the VIP application again for a moment. Debug, VIP app. Now we have here, let's take, for example, this, the first name field here. First name. We would like to do a click on the first name field, drag and drop it into the actions table, le first name dot click, le first name dot what was it, press keys, for example, where I type in hello or whatever it is, or John, and so on. And it's therefore, so in my opinion, really cool, because you can just take the UI elements, put it in code. And now have an eye on this code here. If I'm now start to regroup things here into in my repository, so create logical groups, I would like to have all my fields here together in, or input fields here in this element. I take them, have a look at that section here. We also automatically refactor the code for you guys. So whenever a tester applies changes in the repository, the code will not be broken. That's actually, in my opinion, pretty cool. And in the background, everything is text-based here in Ranorex, so you can use whatever version control system you would like to use. You can use assembler, you can use GitHub, Team Foundation Server, whatever tool you prefer, and then also integrate all these tests into any CI system. To get back to Delphi a little bit more, maybe some of you think, oh, yeah, but what about all these tons of controls that are out there? We have support for pretty much, I don't know, our developers really did an awesome job to support all the individual controls. This is one of our internal test applications. Does not make much sense, but it contains lots of individual UI controls, and we can identify, oh, wrong SPY, because I was in whitelisting mode and only whitelisted applications would get analyzed. This red rectangle shows what we can recognize in here. When I go to this button with size 600, we can read out all these capabilities. We can even work with reflection on these items, so we can call methods on these elements. Let me quickly, where is it, hide this button with size 600. It's gone. So you can also interact with the application with methods in the background if necessary. You can serialize objects from Ranorex to the application or backwards, as long as it's serializable with some object proxies that we implemented, so you can also cross technology borders. So our features, I love this video, it's also possible to track that, to track this dancing cat. So or for even a very old version of Delphi. This is XE3. We have support for Delphi starting with XE2 for 32-bit or with XE3, 32 and 64-bit upwards. Everything older than that is supported by Ranorex, and we are able to recognize whatever, that's also a good one, whatever controls are available in there. So there's pretty much nothing what we are unable to identify, as you can see here. We recognize it as a Delphi element. And this is actually, in our opinion, we currently have the best Delphi integration that you can find, or Delphi UI test automation capabilities that you can find in the market out there. Okay, that was it from my side for the live demonstration. Just would like to mention that these were only very few features that I wanted to show you, that I showed you here during this demo. It was only the tip of the iceberg. We have also something like agent-based test deployment. You can integrate the tests, what I showed you here, into Jenkins, into TestRail, Jira, individual version control system. We provide a maintenance mode to enhance the capabilities when a test goes wrong, to quickly fix it. We have image-based automation and much, much more. Also, one last thing, the execution of such a Ranorex test, when you do it in CI, is pretty simple. Most of the people here at Ranorex are developers. What Ranorex Studio creates is an EXE. Running the test is as easy as just starting this EXE. This EXE accepts parameters. You can, with these parameters, fine-tune it, deploy it, limit the data range. Many, many things possible. And this brings me to the last slides here of my presentation, and then I will have a closer look at the Q&A panel and answer some questions there. We also provide other free webinars which give you a deeper dive into desktop, web, and mobile testing, how to transform desktop testing, your desktop testing with intelligent automation, how to integrate into TestRail. And we also have lots of on-demand webinars. These are recorded webinars which will help you to get started with Ranorex. You can, if you have not tried Ranorex Studio yet, just download it on our website. It's when you go to our start page here, download the free trial. We have a free trial that gives you full all the capabilities of Ranorex for 30 days for free. It's complete full-blown version of Ranorex Studio. It also includes the Delphi testing. Everything is included in that. And if you have any questions, then please feel free to reach out to me directly or also to my colleagues from the sales team through sales@ranorex.com or sales.us@ranorex.com. And that brings me to the Q&A part. And as you see here, Tobias did an awesome job. There were tons of questions. Tobias, I don't know if your microphone is set up. Do you have some question that would be interesting for the audience? But before that, I would have some questions to you guys. It's also Q&A from me again. Do you plan to introduce some automated UI testing in the future? Now, even if you now have seen how easy it can be, would be great if you could provide me some feedback here, just to get a little bit of an understanding also for us if what we are doing here is interesting for you. Don't worry about it. We won't flood you with marketing material if you say yes. You promise. 17%, 20% provided the feedback. Hey, thank you very, very much. Would be really great if you could share feedback. What do you think about that? With me? Oh, we're at close to 30%. That's great.
I have a question for you.
Yeah?
Are you saying you won't flood them with marketing material only if they say yes?
No, we
Okay, I
won't.
just want to make sure I understood correctly.
No, we won't then send hundreds of emails. Sorry for the misunderstanding. No. Actually, we're not what's it? We're not Facebook or whoever is out there. Okay, I will close this poll here. And what's your impression of Ranorex Studio? Do you like it? Throw it away. Don't like it? Would also be great if you could share your thoughts with me about that. Tobias, while the people are answering, do you have some questions? Would be interesting.
Yeah, maybe you can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you.
Maybe one question is, do tests continue working if the controls are moved around?
Oh, great question. No, yes, the tests will work. No, that's not a problem at all. It doesn't matter where the controls are. So if you move the controls from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, as long as the identifiers stay stable. So when you rename your OK button to submit button, but there is one stable identifier, we will identify it until the end of the world or until the end of Delphi or whatever it is. Okay, I will close the poll now. Thank you very much for this feedback.
Another question. Can you test applications built with third-party components like Dev Express?
Yep, we have. Give me a moment. Maybe there are lots of controls listed on our website. 1 second. Ranorex Delphi. I know that our developers invested lots of time to support Dev Express controls as well. Here we go. Supported controls. We have all VCL controls. These controls from Dev Express as well. Also some controls from TMS, and just give it a try. So we really try to support mostly everything what we could find out there. So check out our website. Toby, thank you very much for your feedback, for the question. And regarding the if the buttons have moved questions of if the controls have moved, and whenever a control would not be found anymore, the only thing that you have to do is retrack it and adopt the identifier. But usually we're doing whatever we can to create identifiers, these paths, which are as robust as possible. We're investing lots of time in that. Okay, let's continue with the Q&A. Have a look. Toby, some more questions?
So maybe if the controls are not uniquely labeled, can these be automated?
That also works. That also works. So the ideal approach would be unique labels. If they are not uniquely labeled, then we can also use with indexes or with relationships to controls. So the second control after that one. There are lots of options here. There is also a question regarding C++ builder support. Actually, we're also able to identify controls of C++ applications with the most common C++ frameworks. Doesn't matter if it's MFC applications. We have Qt support. So give it a try. That works usually very, very well too. There's also a question if we support Android or iOS. Everything is supported as well. So you can also create your Android and iOS tests with Ranorex. There's also a question, how can you inspect underlying non-UI data structures during the test? We have developers in the audience, usually 5. This is a very interesting question, and that unleashes the full power of Ranorex actually. How Ranorex works is when we start here, for example, this application here, and I start the SPI, then Ranorex uses or loads an additional library here together with the Delphi application that enables us to walk through the UI tree and that we can also live within the application. And because of that, then you can also interact with the application itself, and we can then also read out all the methods, all the properties of the individual controls. If you don't want to have that, you could also disable the Delphi integration, and then we would just use MSAA or the standard automation interfaces that Microsoft, that Windows provides. Therefore, you can use it, but if you don't want it, you could also disable it, but that usually helps you very, very much to identify controls. There's also one question, if Angular is supported. Definitely yes. We support pretty much every web framework that you can imagine, even the new Shadow DOM that was introduced currently. You can test this with Ranorex Studio, or when we go more to the legacy part, we can also test Flash Flex applications with Ranorex Studio. Okay, there's the question if Ranorex also supports Cocoa desktop applications on Mac OS. Unfortunately, it's currently not possible to execute tests or to identify items on Mac if the test is running on a Mac. What would work is if you can also execute this Cocoa application on or started on a Windows here, then I'm very sure that Ranorex would also be able to identify UI elements there. So we have an awesome object identification support, and I've hardly seen any application where we can't find UI controls. We have a choker, how we call it, if we're unable to identify UI elements, and this is our GDI plugin, which identifies elements on a very, very low level of the operating system. GDI is, I think, the graphics drawing interface here. Okay, I'd say we're coming to the end of this session. So 3 minutes left. Jim, I think there is the break after this session here. Am I right?
Oh, that is correct.
Oh, so I have time.
You do have time, yeah. So go ahead, and we do. Let me real quick. I will just mention that after the break, we do have at 1 p.m. CST, we have live reports in Fast Report, how to interact with the user from the report, and in room 2 is the C++ language conversation. So yeah, keep going as long as you want to, and people can come back and join us then, or just stick around for the whole hour, or you can keep going as far as I'm concerned. Actually, no, I do need to stop at some point to switch things up for the next. Yeah.
No, I will just have a look at some last questions here. So guys, if you have some remaining questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I will open, where is it? This slide again. We have free webinars. You can download our trial and use it for 30 days, all the functionality. And at this point, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. You can also reach out to me directly. I'm Chris, or to my colleague Tobias. Feel free to ask us whatever questions you have. And yeah, there are no additional questions anymore in the Q&A panel. I think Tobias already answered all of them. Toby, do you remember one that we forgot? Doesn't seem so. One thing I forgot to say, and if you get a RAD Studio Architect license, then you also get a 1-year termed Ranorex license so seed locked license with this Embarcadero architect deal. If you get a new architect license, then you can also, this is one offering that we agreed that we started with the Embarcadero guys here. Oh, thank you very much for the praise. And very cool question. I hope the trial does not support reading password from password text boxes from Lewis. Depends what you do with it, Lewis. But we are not a big malware here in reading out passwords. Don't worry about that. If you need it for automation, we can do it, but we are not a big brother here. Okay. As I see, there are no further questions. Thank you very much for your time, for all the lively questions. You were a really great audience. Thank you very much from my side. Thank you very much from overall Ranorex. It was a pleasure for me to do the demo today.